A quick content warning about today's episode. We got off topic a bit, and between about the 10-minute mark and the 15-minute mark, there's some talk about experimentation on animals, including some cases of cruelty. It's nothing graphic, but it still might upset some listeners. If you want to skip that, we move on to human experimentation at the 15-minute mark. Or if you prefer, we get back on topic at about the 25-minute mark.
I'd encourage you to stop using the phrase bad trip, just because you can learn anything from even bad experiences, right? I've heard, there's no such thing as a bad trip, just difficult experiences, which is really euphemistic.
Yeah,
so
it's like getting your arm broken is a rough experience.
Yeah, right.
I would also call
right.
it a bad experience, but
right. But I think more to the point is that like you can get something out of sometimes the most out of like the worst experiences. That's been my experience lately, and it's like the experience was fucking awful. It was the worst thing ever. But so I'd call them like psychedelic crisis. I suppose I don't know. That's kind of like replacing. Everybody knows what a bad trip is. And like not everybody knows what a psychedelic crisis is. Yeah, right. But like that bad trips exist, and I said like, oh man, my friend was having a psychedelic crisis, and you'd be like, what the fuck does that mean?
Sure.
Right? And I'd be like, bad trip, right? But you can pretty much always learn something from them. Another thing people say in the psychedelic world is like you don't always get the trip you want, but you always get the trip that you need.
Oh my
right?
God.
Which again
Bunch
is
of
like
fucking hippies.
but it's one of those things where it's like it's probably actually really valuable to believe that whether it's true or not, because
Right.
then you'll look for what you can actually gain from the experience afterward. So I mean, if I'm just being straight, I just say there's something to be gained from like that experience, no matter how terrible it was. But if I were telling young people, I might even consider lying to them and say like, you always get the trip that you need, man. Like if you went through that, like you needed to go through that, dude.
yeah,
and it's hard to not sound like a ridiculous hippie when saying something like that, but it might actually be more beneficial that way. In a dark arts sort of way for those aspiring rationalists out there that know what dark arts are. But
most of them.
My understanding of them is basically whenever you're sacrificing epistemic rationality for the sake of instrumental, right? So it's like
That's a good way of putting it.
You're basically lying to yourself in order to get more done,
Or to other people.
Yeah. Right?
It's even more unethical when it's
when it's other, because you're deciding right. Yeah, but when you're deciding for other people, right. So I don't know. The majority of my experiences have been with mushrooms. I've done acid like enough times where I feel like I know what I'm doing, and I feel like I know what's there. I haven't done like massive doses of acid though. I've done massive doses of mushrooms and like multiple times. So I feel like I know my way around that really well. If you've done one psychedelic, you can kind of know your way around other ones, sort of, right? But they're different drugs, right?
can you have psychedelic crises on mushrooms?
Oh yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
So,
I mean, you can lose it on a lot of things, right?
Gotcha.
But yeah, for sure. I'd say until I had one, I didn't really think it was possible.
Yeah.
Because I've gone like super insanely deep, and in like not the best place to do it, like. If I had noticed people giving me funny looks or something like that, right, it could have sent me into a bad spot. It just didn't, and it was, all good, happy, wonderful. And then one time that wasn't the case. Hey, bud, I brought my cat today, in case. So if we ever say like, "Oh, hi, bud," "Oh, hello, you're so cute," it's to my cat.
yeah. I think we're basically in the episode now.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, this is actually a good precursor. Like
Yeah.
we're talking about drug experiences, which relate to spirituality in the sense that I think we'll be talking about it today.
All right, so
For
welcome
me,
to
they're the same thing.
Welcome to the
Really.
Bayesian Conspiracy, everyone. We're not sure how long we've been going so far. We'll figure it out in post.
Welcome to the intro.
Yes,
No.
I am Eniash,
I'm Steven.
and we have with us...
Katrina Jenkins, Cannonball, Bullington, Stanton, something. I'll just
Your name keeps getting longer every time.
Yeah, why not? Junior, Mad Dog. Just
You can't call yourself Mad Dog.
The Mad Dog.
Else
people in high school literally
dog.
called me Mad Dog.
What did you do in high school?
I think my French teacher said it one time, and for like no reason at all, it stuck. It was.
You're like, I bit the head off of one bat, and all of a sudden,
I'm basically the Secretary of Defense. What's that guy's name? The Secretary of Defense now.
Bannon? No, wait.
No.
I know. I'm just kidding.
Mattis. He's like actually a really good dude. Like from by all accounts, like people in the military love this guy. Like one of his nicknames was Mad Dog. Right? I had no idea why, but the Warrior Monk is another one, which is probably more.
That's a pretty fucking cool.
Right?
Thing.
Yeah. No. Like he's really well respected. Dan Carlin loves him, so I love him.
Fair enough.
Right?
That's a good enough endorsement for me.
I'm not gonna. Anyway.
I think Jenkins will do for the episode just because it's faster. Fewer syllables.
And it is less syllables, and this way people will be familiar with you from before.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's what we called you then.
And we're talking about something that I'm not an expert on at all. So lest anybody think that I might be an expert, and I'm here because I'm an expert.
Why are you here? Are you just here because you brought the kitten?
Mostly, yeah.
Okay.
The kitten is...
The kitten is the closest we have to spirituality.
I wanted to see Steven interact with the kitten, and it's been satisfying so far. So
I'm a big fan of cats and kittens and all things small and fuzzy.
Yeah.
He's both of those things.
Yes, he is.
So nowadays when you talk about Japan, do you tell people about the seeing of the foxes in the not chupacabra, capybara?
Chupacabra. There's one of those too, man.
That's how I remember it too. He's like, he petted a chupacabra, but that's not a real thing.
Yeah,
it is.
But I mean, it's about the same length. It has the same letters and more or less the same order. It's basically a chupacabra.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think the 90 seconds I spent talking to you guys about it was the longest conversation I had about the trip.
Good Lord.
No, when I talked to him about Japan, he was like, I really enjoyed the movies on the flight back. And I was like, what? That's something an insane person says.
So that particular line was because I knew it would piss off Matt. All right. I went with a guy who has been fanboying over Japan since he was a kid, and I kind of have been too. But I didn't come back as like crazy hyped as he did, so I like giving him a hard time by when people ask me how it was in front of him, I'd be like, meh, 4 out of 10, whatever. No, it was
good.
It was
call.
fun. I got back like 2 months ago. Yeah, it was a fine trip. I don't know what to say about it other than there were animals there.
God.
And good food.
And that you loved the animals so much.
I mean, it was the animals. We were around them for like 45 minutes around the trip. And honestly, it was in a circumstance that I don't think would fly in the United States.
Yeah.
There were a lot of owls and mixed species. Yeah, so like part of me, I was like, man, these animals are probably not flourishing right now. But I was like, well, I'm already here. And they're not so miserable that they're killing each other or themselves. So, it can't be all bad.
Seriously, it can't be that bad. They're in decent enough health and kept in okay conditions, right?
Yeah, I mean, I assume. It just like, I just had to look at like the quarters of, I don't know, there were 20 owls in a room about the size, but maybe 1.5 times the size of your living room.
Okay.
Plus like the capybara and a couple of other things, but like it just seemed crowded, and I was like, this is kind of a drag. But I mean, it was fine. No, it was fun. I don't know what to say about it. It wasn't a spiritual experience for me.
If it makes you feel better, I used to put down rats as like part of my job after doing experiments on them, so it was ethical. But like in all seriousness, like I didn't like feel that bad knowing like, okay, it's either like rat in the wild get ripped apart by an owl or some other sort of something, or starve to death or freeze to death, or live a long life full. And
I keep hearing those sorts of things, and I don't know if they really matter all that much. Like, because
I don't know.
Whatever, the last few minutes of your life are the least important anyway. Nothing is going to be affected by them.
Oh yeah, good point.
You're not going to be like scarred emotionally or whatever. Like, as bad as dying is, and I'd rather have, a not horrific pain death. Like, if the rest of their life is pretty cool, like running around in the wild and sometimes finding food and sometimes not, every now and then like scoring with some hot rat chick or something. If that is a fulfilling life for a rat, then I don't think, freezing to death or being torn apart by an owl in the last few minutes is really any price at all to pay.
Well, freezing to death, I think, precludes like having a really, really rough time for a long time. Like if you're freezing to death, you're alive for a while and just like really struggling for an extended period of time. I don't know, unless it's flash frozen or something.
Like your last hours or days are spent with you desperately trying to find warmth and food, right?
Yeah, right.
That sounds like a shitty way to go. But I mean, I don't know how much the rats flourished being in a lab, but it's depending on what you're doing, it's a small price to pay for progress. So
yeah,
right.
No, yeah, I thought it was justified.
It's totally worth it for the human progress. Yes.
Yeah. Well, like it also depends what they're doing. I got through half of Peter Singer's "All Animals Are Equal" when I was like 17 or 18, maybe. I don't know.
I have
in that time range.
Objections to that title, but go on.
I don't know if he chose it or not, but I think
that's probably why he did it.
Well, so I mean, Singer also has just a great habit of deliberately being provocative. He wrote an essay defending bestiality called "Heavy Petting."
Jesus.
So yeah, and I don't think he's pro bestiality. What he is pro challenging your intuitions and making you like actually articulate a defense.
Yeah.
In All Animals Are Equal, just like every other philosophy book I've read, the primary argument's made in like the first 20 pages, and the next 300 are just backing up the argument if you're not already sold. And so he talks a lot about the experiments done on animals over the last 30 or 50 years. This book was published in the 70s. Almost all of them are super pointless. It was just like, I wonder how much of this it takes to kill rats. I wonder how much of this it takes to kill rats. I wonder if, if you electrocute them enough, if they get sad. Like, stuff that I think was paraphrased like, either you can learn nothing useful from it, in which case, what's the fucking point? Or rather, you can learn nothing useful from it that helps humanity. Or they're similar enough to us in that you can learn useful stuff, in which case, this is like now an ethical nightmare, right? If they experience a ton of separation anxiety watching their babies get electrocuted to death in front of them,
wow,
it's very funny, right? No, you guys, we're laughing at the cat.
I was laughing at that because that's fucked up.
It is fucked up, and this is the kind of insane shit that they've done to rats, dogs, everything that
acquiring an LD50 is pretty important for a lot of chemicals, right?
Is it important to know what the LD50 is for rats? Like,
well,
for example,
a rat's kind of a scaled down human in a lot of ways.
But I mean,
enough ways where it's a good analog,
and establishing that a rat does get upset when its children are electrocuted in front of it. At least you figure out now that rats may have some more moral worth because they are able to understand that these are my children and they are not happy, and that makes me unhappy. And so, like, otherwise, how would we know that they aren't just meat robots, right?
Well, I think what his complaint was that people didn't take a lesson from it. They were just like, oh, okay, so they do suffer. All right, let's keep doing weird shit to them. So, like, I could get behind doing animal experimentation, even on like great apes, to the extent that you do the experiments that you need to do while they're as comfortable as they can be, and you treat them great when they're not being experimented on.
There's a whole field of bioethics.
Yeah,
people,
and it wasn't really a thing in the 70s when this book was written.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
right. That makes sense.
Yeah,
that was 40 years ago now.
Yeah,
the 70s were 40 years ago.
Right. Yeah, we've come a long way.
Feel old now,
and now it's gotten to the point where you can't ethically ask people questions.
What?
Yeah, did you not read Scott Alexander's thing about how he tried to run a survey once?
Man, I haven't tried. I haven't been keeping up with SSC for a while.
Oh my god, it was fantastic.
I want to get into that in 1 second, but I want to drop a quick tidbit about Japan that they haven't really had their animal rights movement over there yet. And I think it's something like 4, maybe 7% of the population is vegetarian. So as a result, vegetarian options are very hard to come by. And I think that's why you can have places like this kind of sad petting zoo where they had this sort of thing because no one really cares over there.
Yeah.
Anyway, fun tidbit. All right, so when was what's this SSC?
Oh, well, he basically wanted to add a questionnaire to some of the people that were being taken in at his mental hospital. I think it was just the psychiatric ward of a general hospital. Basically, after 3 years of struggling or 2 years of struggling with the ethics board, was unable to do it because it could be too traumatizing to ask people these questions, and they were simple intake questions that actually get asked all the time anyway, but you couldn't write down their answers without violating their rights and shit. And eventually it was like, well, fuck it, I am done. I've spent 2 years trying to do a simple little research project and I can't fucking do it.
What questions were these?
Dude, I'll have to link the post, but it was the most basic shit, like, have you been sad in the last 2 weeks? I mean, it was really ridiculous, easy crap. And part of the problem being that there's not really sure what the guidelines are, and so they are as cautious as possible. And it was horrific.
So I did exactly.
I guess horrific is a bad term considering we were just talking about shocking babies. it was ridiculous and disheartening, and I don't see how any research gets done ever.
Regarding the shocking babies thing, I might be misremembering the specifics, but they definitely did things to figure out what makes them sad, and is it do they experience empathy when their like siblings get tortured or something like that? Those were definitely
things.
It's
a legit thing to find out.
But to what end?
Well, first of all, to know if we should care about them, and to maybe figure out when empathy evolved in the mammalian line, and it could be interesting to know that.
I could see it being interesting to know if lessons were drawn from it and we adjusted behavior accordingly. The fact that it took us decades after those findings to adjust is kind of a drag.
I mean, if they keep redoing the experiment every few weeks, then I can see how that may just be sadism.
Sure. And it might be really interesting to know, like, if you chop the arm off of one twin, if the other identical twin notices.
Actually, yes.
As an identical twin, I would like to say that I don't want to submit to that research.
Well, no. That's why we do that research on identical twin rats.
See if the other one starts limping.
Yeah.
Or if you're Mengele, you do it, to people.
Wait, what?
This was some of the crazy shit they did to the Jewish captives in the Holocaust.
They would cut the limbs off one twin?
They did really awful twin experiments, yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. I don't... What, do you remember the name of the scientist guy that was like the head of all that?
Tuskegee?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
No. Tuskegee was the United States syphilis experiment.
I don't know anything.
No, wait. Then I'm thinking...
Oops, that does not sound right.
Man, I am just lowering my opinion of Nazis every day.
Who knew Nazis could be so evil?
Turns out those guys suck, maybe, right?
Whoa.
So they treated humans like rats. And I was like, this will be interesting to find out, right? And, I guess, yeah, sure. But, and I'm not saying that there's an equivalency, but there's...
Question. Should the research be destroyed?
No.
I mean, it's too late now, obviously.
No, yeah.
But when they first got the research, should they have destroyed it immediately rather than...
I vote no. I mean, at the very least, it's done. If there was anything useful to learn, then it's worth keeping around, because we don't want to have to find out again, right? Because we don't want to do the experiment to find out again.
I figure, so like the downside is like people that were like one or two steps away from that could just like still be horrified or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I suppose it should be like at the very least like locked in a vault for a while until it's like everybody agrees like, okay, we're not going to cry because our great grandfathers were tortured or something like that. Like,
yeah, maybe if there was like centuries down the line, then unlock it.
It really depends. Like, I don't know.
Because I mean, like Stephen said, the damage is already done, and it feels awful that there's nothing that's being gotten from it. But fucking, when I read Leviathan Makes, they made this point that if you just accept the research, then basically the researcher has won. He's contributed to the human body of knowledge, which was what he was trying to do, and it's an incentive for other people to keep doing that in the future, especially if they're willing to, take prison time or whatever else the consequences may be in order to make this mark on humanity. The only way to keep them from gaining the advantage is just destroy the data. And that'll stop people from doing that in the future. If they know that even if they get all this data and people are like, well, the damage is already done, it's like, no, fuck it. This data is being destroyed anyway, and so don't bother doing it in the first place.
Or you could blast their name from all the publishings and say this was found out by somebody who history will forget because they were a dickbag, and then that person doesn't get any credit for forever, right?
Yeah.
Then the knowledge is out there, but they don't get to be the person who made those discoveries.
They're already like going against a bunch of societal rules at that point anyway. I don't think if war crimes isn't a strong enough like deterrent, right? Like, you'll go to prison forever in an international prison, or however they do that. Like if that's not a deterrent, I don't think so, especially not in the age of the internet when you can get your data out immediately to everybody.
It would be much harder nowadays too.
How are you gonna?
But if they didn't put it on the internet, if it was some guy in his,
But like if that's his goal, then he's going to get it on the internet. It's going to be like, so yeah.
Unless you intercept him first and destroy the data. Like I know it's extremely unlikely to happen nowadays, but if it had happened, if we were the guys making the decision back then, I kind of think it would have been the best deal just to destroy it.
I can see the benefit of that. My initial response was kind of knee jerk, and I'm considering your guys' points that the fallout, especially for like, if it was my grandmother that got tortured, and I was reading about like, oh, it turns out that I'm trying to think of some of the other insane shit they did to people.
See, I'm the other way around, and I was actually, my initial answer was the same as yours. I mean, the people are already dead. We shouldn't let that data go to waste. But I am more on your side if it was my grandmother or even me. Like, if I went through all this and lost a limb and everything, I would want the data to be used for something. But like, as a more objective outside person, I'd be like, no, I'm sorry. That'll just encourage this sort of behavior in the future. We're going to destroy this data, and I'm sorry that you lost your limb.
I suppose that's like such a small... I expect that to be like a really small portion of their motivation. is like they want to know themselves a lot of the time. I wouldn't expect that to be like such a large portion of the motivation that like, oh no, other people might not know that I did this research. I think it's I think it's a much smaller deterrent than all of the other deterrents that are already there.
You're working in research, right?
Yeah. I no longer kill rats though.
Right, but isn't the point to gain more knowledge?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes it's just for fun and curiosity, right?
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, I'd like to develop something that works, that can then be used. Right.
And so if
it's
your
not
data
necessarily more knowledge, it's more capabilities.
If your data made it so that this thing that you want to be working and usable was more likely to be working and usable more fast, then objective partially achieved?
Yeah, I guess so. But still,
you don't give that many fucks.
Like every scientist I know has like moral objections to that sort of thing. Like you're talking about like you have this huge deterrent of like, oh no, then I'd be evil. Like, oh no, then I'd be punished horribly, right? If like all of these other things, like my name would be trampled, my reputation would be destroyed, right? And then like I feel like normal base human sort of thing, like my data might not be distributed is like number like 8 or 9 on the list of like why I shouldn't do this, right? But I suppose if you're crazy, if you really are like a crazy person, but like I don't think of like the people that were doing that as like totally crazy people. I think
no, I mean they were working within the system.
Yeah, so
but you'd have to be damaged to do that kind of thing to another person. You have to some sort of psychological damage to look at a person
kind of
screaming, saying, "Please don't." Be like, I'm gonna do it anyway.
My parents didn't have any problem strapping me down and cutting off a piece of my dick when I was a tiny baby. So
yeah, but they didn't do it. They didn't do it because they were like,
oh, it'll happen. Out of malice.
Yeah, and they also didn't do it out of curiosity. They did it because they thought it was good for you.
Well,
right?
I mean, the Nazis probably didn't. Well, most of them probably didn't do it out of malice either. They were like,
by the way, I'm circumcised. Sorry.
I understood where you were getting at.
Sorry, the public people.
Now we all have to visualize your dick. Hold on, give us a second.
Nobody knows who I am. I'm using a pseudonym.
All right. Well, I can visualize your dick because I know who you are.
All right.
do you have a mental microscope? I'm kidding.
Oh, dude.
Go with
small dick jokes.
Works with
classic.
Electrons.
No, but I mean, for Nazis, it was probably a lot like working on rats or dogs or something. You know?
What I'm saying is
they're not humans.
You have to have some psychological damage, I think, to have distance between other humans and that.
My point is, like, they were working within some sort of system. I don't think it's necessarily psychological damage. I think they could just be treated in a certain way.
Do you think it would be rewarding the
taught
system?
in a certain way? What?
Do you think it would be rewarding the system to let the
system?
Yeah, to let the
that
data
system. Yeah, I suppose so. But like, once you get to that point, you've already destroyed the Nazis. Yeah, right. So like, the Nazis aren't coming. Sorry,
they're not really coming back.
They're not really coming back in Germany the way it was in the 1930s.
Right.
As far as I can tell.
Yes. The Nazi Party is not in power.
Yeah.
So what were we here to talk about again?
Fuck, I don't know, dude.
No. So I wanted 20 minutes ago when you mentioned that you weren't an expert on this sort of stuff.
Oh, you said, yeah.
I want to say two things. One, that this might be something that's worth articulating on the air, because I've said this in private, but when we bring on guests, it's not always, like, if they're like an expert, we'll mention that in their intro. For the most part, we bring on somebody who knows more than us, me and Inyash, and that's not hard. So like, we bring on somebody who can guide and lead the conversation a bit, even if they're mid-level and we're entry-level, right?
And being good on microphone is also something which I have discovered is a skill, which I didn't realize. Like, some people just right away freeze up and be like, oh god, microphone, what's going on? And like, Jenkins is like, yeah, I'm just here to bullshit with you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I just mentioned circumcision offhand.
Right.
So that's my brothers are gonna make fun of me for that.
What, are they not circumcised?
No, they'll make fun of me for bringing it up because they know that it still makes me upset and that's pathetic. Right? Like,
I don't think it's pathetic. I'm a little bummed. My understanding is that sex is less fun than it would be.
But it's kind of pathetic. Like on the one hand, that like I'm still preoccupied about it enough to like say it on microphone. That's the part.
If you're preoccupied enough to like talk about it for 5 hours a week, maybe
it'll help discourage.
I'm up to like 6 or 7. No.
Maybe it'll help discourage people in the future, or parents in the future, from getting their kids circumcised.
Yeah, I hope so.
If you're still like, look, dude, fucking, I'm in this old and I'm still pissed about it, so don't do this to your kids.
Yeah.
If I had kids, I wouldn't circumcise. If I had a male son, I wouldn't circumcise him.
Unless it was medically necessary, in which case, fine.
Well, yeah, of course. But I'm not going to do cosmetic surgery on my baby.
Right. I'm just going to tattoo their forehead.
Yeah.
Ooh. With what? Your name? Property
whatever religion I'm a part of by that time, right? Like that's
okay. But are you planning on joining a religion?
I'll probably make one. That's everybody's plan, right? No,
it isn't.
No. You could just
as everyone stops and thinks, "What is my plan?" Oh God, I have no plan.
Yeah.
So the second part in the spirituality thing is that you brought more books than I own on the subject. So you could just tattoo on your baby's head.
Even really,
we never actually officially introduced the topic.
We tried to for about 30 seconds.
Sort of. Yeah. I guess like apparently
we were talking about spirituality.
Yeah, our spirituality and ritual.
But we're having fun. That's cool.
Episode got more on ritual than spirituality, and so there was some desire to talk more about spirituality.
That's right. The last episode we got really hung up on a couple of things, especially about I still don't really know what a ritual is. So yeah, that goal was going to be kind of a hybrid, and then it got distracted by me not understanding ritual and
us not explaining it or tabooing it.
Tabooing would have been important. We forgot that skill all too late. Mm-hmm. Something about your art of rationalist fails you when you most need it. Mm-hmm. And we wasted a conversation to your guys' detriment.
I don't think the conversation was entirely wasted, but
no, it was fun.
It would have been better if we remember to taboo that early on.
Also a 30-minute digression on witchcraft, so which I don't regret having.
Yeah,
so,
that was interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, so this one, I think in one of our earliest episodes we talked briefly about like spiritual experiences in the context of non-religion, right?
I don't know your earliest. Well, no, I think I've listened to pretty much all of your episodes at one point. There have been a couple where I was too upset with the audio, so I skipped to the next one. But,
okay,
man,
our audio did used to be much
so
bad.
Sorry.
No, that's very understandable.
It was actually the Yudkowsky one, and I was
okay.
so.
Oh, so you didn't?
I should probably go back to it, but
you didn't listen to the one with Robert last week, then, did you?
No, I did.
Actually. That one was rough.
I just finished that earlier today.
Yeah.
But that was fine.
Worse than the Yudkowsky one?
What's up?
Was that worse than the Yudkowsky one?
I think so.
So much worse.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want you to try. You have the raw audio. Listen to that, and then listen to the good stuff or to the edited stuff, and then come on the next episode and say, remember how bad that one was? You should have heard the raw version, because Stephen worked really hard to make it sound as bad as it did.
We appreciate your sacrifice.
Yeah, it was. I'm sorry everyone I appreciate the sacrifice of everyone who listened to it. It was a great conversation, but it was just hard to hear. Anyway, so this was a fun conversation because I think that spirituality has been bogarted by religious contexts. Or it might even be fair to say that like they own it and we're trying to like salvage part of it for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
The conversation we were having kind of before we introduced the show was about psychedelic drugs.
See, I feel weird that every time we bring up spirituality, drugs come into play. I'm like, that's not all there is.
It's the same thing. It's not all there is, but
like I've had a ton of spiritual experiences, especially when I was much younger, and they never involved any drugs at all.
They don't have to,
right?
But I think one way to put it is that like if you take 300 micrograms of LSD, you're going to have, I think, what Jenkins and I would describe as a spiritual experience.
How many is 300 micrograms?
3 hits.
Because I had 2.5,
really depends.
And I had not a spiritual experience. I had a fun experience, but certainly not a spiritual one.
If you're of Enyash's size, build, and tolerance, and you have 500 micrograms,
right.
You will have an experience that you will have. I don't know. You read the accounts of people who've had religious and spiritual experiences in history or in contemporary books, and you're like, yeah, I totally see what you guys are talking about. Not that I believe what you know. It's one thing to like have a crazy experience and say, yep, that was pretty cool. I had a great time. I feel like I learned a lot about myself. It's a huge misstep to say, and now I know facts about nature that I didn't know before. So like it's one thing to like Francis Collins, I don't know if he's still the director of the NIH or not, but he was a few years ago. Wrote that book about his coming to terms with Christianity, and he described like
saw the triple waterfall, right?
Exactly. He saw the waterfall frozen into three streams, which spoke to him of the Trinity of Christianity,
and
he fell to his knees.
Batshit when you hear it.
It does,
but there must have been something going on in his brain right at that point.
He had a really powerful experience, and that was the context in which he decided to slap onto it, and it came ready-made, and it worked for him.
I've had powerful experiences before too, but I was able to say to myself, this is a normal thing that humans experience, and it doesn't mean that a crazy bullshit God exists. Well, those weren't the words exactly that I used. I'm like using that now, but I was able to, power through it, I guess, and say, yes, this is a spiritual thing I'm feeling, but it has no impact on whether magic exists,
Mm.
Well, and I've talked with people who are religious who've had similar experiences, and they interpret it through that context. They say that experience was profound and insane. That must have been the divinity talking to me.
Right, which...
I agree it's a misstep, but I think it's an understandable misstep if that's the lens that you're viewing your universe through anyway, right?
Well, yeah, they kind of have the monopoly on, like, all spiritual speak, right? Because it's really hard to talk about it without sounding like a froofy idiot.
Yeah.
And
we need to introduce some sort of rationalist shamanism. Or like, this is your experience,
dude.
and this is your spiritual experience, and this is how they work, and this is not has nothing to do with spiritual beings existing. Yes, I guess you did just say everyone wants to create a religion.
Everybody wants to start their own religion, so there you go.
But I don't want to start a religion. I just want people to be able to interpret these experiences in ways that don't leave them like coming to
you want them to interpret them closer to the way you interpret them.
Yes, yes. I am the rightful caliph now. I'm throwing my hat in that ring.
There you go. Cool. Cool. That's what I thought.
I am not big enough to run with those dogs, but
not yet.
Jesus. But no, I had a friend of a friend, I guess briefly my friend too, but we fell out of contact pretty quickly, where he was an atheist, and then he took a bunch of shrooms for the first time, and he saw Jesus, and after that he was a Christian. And I'm like, what?
That's weird.
That's interesting.
And I was like, you did drugs? And he's like, yeah, I know. I realized I was doing drugs. I still realize it was just the drugs, but yeah, I found God. The drugs was what I needed. And I was like, okay, I don't know how to argue with that.
So he found Christianity. He didn't find God in generic.
Yeah, literally Christianity.
Okay, so
it was a very liberal, light sort of Christian.
So, like, I have a friend who, I know a guy. I guess I haven't talked to him in years, but he wasn't. He, I guess, is still an ex-Mormon, and he was fully on like the I'm not a religious person, and I can't remember if it was LSD or DMT that he took, but he was like, yeah, I can't resolve what I saw other than to say that there's something out there that's greater than us, and I'm going to call that thing God. And I'm like, don't you feel like that's at best like deliberately like misleading?
Yeah.
Can't you just say like, a greater force, which I still, I
mean, the moon is out there. Definitely greater than me. Not calling it God.
Yeah, it was interesting and he was coming from like, he had come out of religion into a non-religious sense, and then he didn't go back to Mormonism, but he was like, yeah, man, where there's something behind the universe. And I guess I haven't taken enough drugs, but I would like to think that my grip on my perception of reality wouldn't change enough to where I would say...
Well, I personally feel like I'm immune to that because I used to believe that like wholeheartedly, I had actual spiritual experiences when I was a kid, and I don't see how I could possibly go back to that.
So can you describe the quality of them, like what exactly do you remember any of them specifically? And what they felt like and looked like, and
this one is going to be childish because I was a child.
Most
at the
of
time.
them are.
Yeah. Okay. Well. All right.
No, I mean regardless, disregardlessly. And you can't describe them without sounding like an idiot most of the time. Like it's really or like a pretentious douche. Like it's. Walking that line is pretty impossible, I've found. So you just have to embrace one of them.
I was in my bedroom, in my bed, and I was scared of basically monsters under my bed, right? Except it wasn't monsters, it was literally Satan, because that was what I was taught. Satan
lived in my head until I was like 20, and I stopped believing like when I was 12. So
okay,
I'm still a little bitter about that.
I want to know more about that in just a second. But yeah, basically I was just terrified and full of fear, because you are when you're a kid and you're in a dark room and you don't know what's around. And so I started asking God for help and to protect me, and he was like, yeah, I got you, bro. Mm-hmm. And it was reassuring and safe and empowering, and it was great to have God on my side like that.
I think that's why the hell component is so great for the mimetic fitness of religions. Right? Because if you just promise, like, yeah, things, no matter what you do, things are going to be great, and, God's got your back, that just is this gentle reassurance. But if you say, if you don't believe in this, and then things are going to get really, really bad for you, like so much worse than you could ever possibly imagine, then you're really on board to, like, buy into it wholeheartedly and tell everybody about it, right?
I mean, I guess. I don't think it's necessary, because the Jehovah's Witnesses didn't have a hell. I was just terrified of Satan.
So they have a Satan but not a hell?
Yeah.
Okay, see, I don't know a lot about Jehovah's Witnesses. So what's the fear of Satan if he's not going to send you to hell?
Well, he's going to corrupt your soul so you won't be saved.
So then what's not saved in Jehovah's Witnesses? Just
purgatory? Oh, right, okay. So yes, if you die as a good Jehovah's Witness, then you will be brought back to life after Armageddon, and you get to live in perfect health for all eternity on a beautiful paradise earth where everyone is happy and bad things don't happen.
And what if you're not
a good Jehovah's Witness? It's basically a transhumanist future.
And if you're not a Jehovah's Witness, you just don't get brought back?
Yeah.
Oh. That doesn't sound so bad.
Oh, so you had the concept
you get to be dead, which sucks.
That does suck, but it's better. It's certain. Maybe that's why Jehovah's
being tortured forever.
But Jehovah's Witnesses
other people don't believe in death. Like death doesn't exist. It's just your spirit moves on to.
Yeah. No, that was one of the harder recruiting parts of Jehovah's Witnessesism.
Yeah, is that death is a real thing?
Yeah. That was a lot of people were like. That was a hard thing to get across.
Weird.
And actually, that's not contrary evidence to my position, though, because Jehovah's Witnessism. I don't know what's the word for that. Seventh Day Adventism.
No, that's a different.
That's
thing.
different religion.
Yeah. I mean, they're related. They spawn off from the same movement.
Okay. Well, so Jehovah's Witnessism isn't that big of a religion, and maybe because they don't have a hell component to scare people into believing it, right?
Okay. That could be.
So, like, if I'm at the door,
have similar tactics, and they got much bigger.
Yeah,
but they have a hell.
Neither of them are proselytizing enough, I think, is the main problem.
Proselytizing enough? They're the ones who go door to door. Are you joking?
Yeah. That was
okay, yeah.
I'm sorry.
You did it with a very flat demeanor.
Word wrong. Yeah, wow.
Actually, do the Mormons have a hell? I don't know that much about the Mormon theology.
I think so. It's the way I've had it described to me is like most people still end up going to heaven, though. It's pretty rare. So that's kind of how they deal with it. Because I think it's more about the works they do than it is... whether your belief system. When I was a kid, it was all about whether you believed or not, right?
That's why they can be baptized post-death if their works were
right. Yeah, and that's why they have the whole Ancestor.com thing.
Yeah.
Or Ancestry or whatever.
While we're on the topic of post-death baptism, I think it'd be great it might not be great for their physical safety, but I think it'd be a great tactic to posthumously baptize every suicide bomber publicly and say... as a Mormon, as a Mormon church stance.
That sounds like a great PR move by the Mormons.
No. What it does is I think it might, like, to the extent that you believe in that sort of voodoo, that could deter suicide bombers from saying, "Well, fuck, I don't want to risk my soul being bogarted by the Mormons," right?
I think the problem there is that no one who is if devout enough in their religion to be a suicide bomber would take the Mormons seriously.
But they wouldn't take the threat of that sort of thing and purifying their
no, they'd
soul.
be like, God is totally looking out for me. I just killed myself for the faith. There's
Fair enough.
no way that the Mormon stupid little ritual is going to overrule the will of God.
All right. Well, if it wouldn't work, it would still be funny. So I stand by it for that reason.
Let's consult Stephen for clever spiritual warfare.
And for funny fallbacks. Best case scenario, it works. Worst case scenario, it's just funny. I don't see a downside. The downside is then if like it did work and people started freaking out about it, they'd start self-immolatingly destroying Mormon churches, whatever those are called, if they have a special name or not.
I believe they're temples.
Temples.
Yeah, I mean the big ones are temples.
So that'd be the downside, obviously. Where were we?
You were going to tell us about Satan in your head.
What? Oh,
yeah.
Satan lived in my head. I don't know. Like,
you can't just drop that and be duh. Don't you guys have that?
I don't know. So I don't think I'm schizophrenic. At least as far as I can tell. But like, whenever my internal monologue was telling me to do something that I knew was bad, right? I characterized that as Satan, and I had a lot of like weird neuroses about him telling me to do bad things, and that.
The intrusive thoughts is
right.
A fairly common thing.
So,
wait, did you stop attributing the intrusive thoughts to Satan, or did you stop having intrusive thoughts?
A little of both. I kind of just like looked up one day and I was like, oh yeah, I don't really think that anymore. That's not like a problem. And it used to be like, like a main aspect of my psyche. Maybe I am schizophrenic, or I was, or something. I have this weird theory that like mild schizophrenia is like really good to be like for. Like in a religious context, right? You're just like, oh yeah, it's like you're connecting with the divine, right? You don't recognize that part of your internal monologue as part of you because it's not a part of you. It's part of the spiritual realm interacting with your brain. So yeah, I don't know. And I feel like those are things that you can probably like train in and out of existence. Have you guys heard of tulpas? Yeah, right. So that's basically like somebody giving themselves multiple personality disorder, right?
Yeah, that's fucking terrifying.
Yeah, right. It's a real. So tulpas are basically like you like train like a new separate personality inside your brain that only you interact with. It sounds like a bunch of like 12-year-old edgelords doing this kind of shit when I read about it, but
look, I don't have kids because I do not want to be responsible for another physical being. Now I have one in my head. Like, fuck.
Well, yeah, that sounds like they're just training themselves into like this sort of I'd argue unhealthy behavior. So I think you can probably do the same thing with, voices in your head or whatever.
Maybe it's what a lot of people do with Jesus.
Yeah, right. That's kind of my theory. I'm kind of just blowing smoke right now, but I don't know. I don't feel like that's a super important thing. I feel like that's pretty common for people to feel like Satan is talking directly to them, or
for a lot of
telling them to do bad things. Right? Is that not a common thing? I just kind of assumed it was.
I have 3 quick thoughts on that, and I'll take them in mixed order. So, one, I think it is a very common thing, and it gets different names. I think if you're raised in a religious context, it could be, especially if you're told explicitly, the bad thoughts are Satan trying to corrupt you. Then you internalize it.
I'm pretty sure I was. I don't remember that specifically.
And so I think then it makes a lot of sense. But everybody has intrusive thoughts, whether it's like, randomly laying in bed with your partner and just like this random image in your head comes up of like you strangling them to death, or like driving down the interstate and be like, I could just swerve into traffic and kill myself and have a dozen people, or just voices saying you're a shitty person, you deserve to die or something. So some people, depending on your upbringing, might call that Satan. A psychologist would call them like intrusive thoughts, and that could stem from depression or other things, or if it's really destroying your life, that could start coming to characteristics of schizophrenia. But yeah, I don't think that it's a sign necessarily of diagnosable neurosis to have thoughts like that. If they're destroying your life,
either. Yeah. I feel like I'm pretty normal.
Yeah, and if they're destroying your life, talk to a doctor. But I think everybody has random thoughts like that once in a while.
Well, yeah, I get intrusive thoughts in the same, like, oh yeah, I could just swerve into traffic and die right now, but not to the sort where I feel like the voice is not me.
Right, and that might be another big component of it.
Psychedelics, interestingly enough, you do enough of them, like a really, really huge amount of them, you can get to the point where like you're not recognizing the sounds that are coming into your brain, like you have no idea where they're coming from, or so if there's a part of your brain that is producing the monologue, there's another part listening to it, right? So if those two are separated enough, right, like
you get the impression it's not you.
And one's altered enough, or both are altered a lot, you're gonna be like, oh, this is like I'm interacting with an angel or anything else, or a fairy or an elf.
So we've used the term spiritual experience a few times. We've never bothered to say what the hell spiritual experience is,
dude. It's like describing an orgasm, or
I could no,
no, you can't. I mean, you can try.
It just feels really good.
Yeah, it feels really good, right? Yeah. What does red look like? I don't know. So it's like there are a few things that it kind of is, and a lot of things that it's not. And we could spend the whole time defining it.
Well, what would we say to someone who is like a Richard Dawkins who's never had a spiritual experience and is like, what are you guys talking about?
To defend Richard Dawkins, I think has had what people, and I think even he would call spiritual experiences, but we could use a caricature of somebody like Richard Dawkins.
Okay.
Yeah, you could say exactly. Here, I put some LSD in your water half an hour ago, or in your orange juice half an hour ago.
No,
don't
drug someone.
No, I'm not saying never do this. But what you might say is like you're gonna buckle up. You're gonna have a spiritual experience, even if we're running this to the absurd.
If you consent to it.
Yeah. And I'm not saying I didn't say do it. In the hypothetical that we're talking to this, that'd be one answer.
No. But if you want to explain what you mean by spiritual experience without drugging someone,
sure.
There are a few things I can bring up.
I've sometimes heard of it as like a loss of ego, where
ego death is one aspect of many. So let's say
you feel connected with the universe rather than as a separate being.
And I think you can have that without the loss of ego. And I think that would still count.
Yeah, not all spiritual experiences involve that. I mean, mine, when God was looking out for me, certainly didn't.
Yeah, and
but I think there's others that I've had, which surprisingly were on alcohol, where I did lose ego and was just entranced by the world.
Okay, so here's a bunch of attributes I can attribute to a spiritual or numinous or mystical experience, or whatever you want to call it. A big one would be like a sense of like cosmic unity or oneness, or just like being, like the separation between like you and your situation is not really there. I am you, you are me. We are the couch, I am the universe, I'm me. That feeling where I is everything and me is also everything. I
think that one's pretty uncommon, though. People don't speak about having that one often.
I'd say that's like the main tier. One.
Oh, the main one.
No, that like if you're saying like, oh man, like I felt like I was everything and like I was the universe, and that's as close to like a binary, you weren't having a spiritual experience or mystical or whatever as I can get. But I mean, there's a bunch of other things. So there's like transcendence of time and space, right? So it's like I don't feel like I'm within this, like the normal experience of time that I usually have, or spatial understanding. So like bliss, ecstasy, that sort of thing would be the next one. Just like extreme, like massive flooding of an emotion of gratitude is really common, right? One of the attributes is just ineffability. Is really hard to explain, right? If this sounds like nonsense, well, it sounds like nonsense. Sorry, I don't know what to do for you. Say, here, eat this plate of mushrooms. You can what?
I was gonna say, I think you can try and pump the intuition using examples that people can relate to. You could ask, have you ever been with somebody that you love and you reflect on how much you love them to the point where you can bring yourself to tears by just reflecting on that feeling and the bond?
I think you love people a lot more than I do.
Well, I don't cry a lot, but I can occasionally have an emotion about, or a physical expression of a physical expression.
It's gonna be my new ringtone from when Stephen calls.
I can occasionally have a feeling. Well, I'm also not huge in day to day of having tons of feelings. But I can have them. So I sound like a robot describing it, but whatever. But I also can have them strong enough to where I physically express them. But I think other people at least know what love is. If you don't, you can find another feeling like gratitude or pleasure, and say, yeah. So picture that, but picture it amped up to a level that you have never experienced before. But you can at least, they have something to start with. So it's not purely ineffable. You can have this moment whether it's on a drug like ecstasy or LSD or mushrooms, or just through reflecting on it. But you think, God, I love whether it's my child or my parents or my partner, and have this moment where you think, man, the world is full of people who love each other that much. And that's kind of a deep thought that can get you going. I don't know if that has the same intangibility as some of the quote spiritual experience stuff, but I think it's a good intuition pump.
I was once asked by a Christian regarding the world and evolution, how can you believe that all this made itself? Where is the wonder and everything? And I was like, first of all, ignoring the made itself comment, I was like, I think you're completely missing evolution, because when I think about the world and how it just springs from basic physics and the interaction of atoms in suns brought about this world, and then the creation of life and how interconnected I am with everything, it brings me to this place where that I do feel like that has been some of my more adult spiritual experiences, this connection with everything and with how things manage to work out the way they are because of how these little tiny molecules interact. And I don't know, I was like, how can you think that some God waved his hand and made it is a more spiritual explanation than the actual physics and biology that we have? That is so much more intricate and beautiful than I say, let there be light and there is light. That's just some dude waving his dick around.
To attest again to Dawkins having spiritual experiences, the last chapter of The Greatest Show on Earth hits that tone, and that's the whole point. In fact, he dissects.
That was his best book, or at least among the top 3.
I liked it a lot. Really, I've only read a handful of his books, but basically, The God Delusion got him popular in some circles, but that's a book about something that bugs him that he doesn't like, and so the tone is very different. I recommend Unweaving the Rainbow all the time. That's a book about something that he loves and that he wanted to share with people. The Greatest Show on Earth is another version of that. But there's a context of fighting back against creationism and stuff in that. But yeah, that is the majesty of the universe, right? And that's a much better story than you're a pawn on a chessboard, but the chess player loves you. And the other guy's the other player's a dick and he doesn't like you. That's not a really interesting story, and neither are any of the origin myths, right? I mean, they're fun and they're culturally relevant or whatever. I'm not going to shit on everything, but they're not the real majesty of the story that science tells us about our origins and our place in the universe is super gratifying. And I think that gratification, that sense, in fact, gratitude, I think this is actually one of his books, or maybe it was Dan Dennett's, that feeling of gratitude might be one of the causes of religion being popular. Because, who do I thank for this? You reflect on this and you do this without the context of science and understanding. And you're like, who gets the props for this, right? This is awesome. And reality doesn't have someone for you to give props to. So you just think, I'm just glad this happened. That's a sort of profound insight that can lead to that sort of spiritual experience kind of thing, right? You spend enough time thinking on that, and especially if you do it in a week by your, in silence under pretty trees or something, and you think, holy shit, this tree that I've been sitting under for the last 2 days, we share a grandparent, right? Like, that's nuts. And that's I'm struggling to articulate part of the ineffability of this kind of experience, right? Mm-hmm. It's one thing to like understand that on a textbook, just like you understand that the Battle of Hastings was in 1066. Like, it's just like a random trivia, right? Mm. Is that the right year? Anybody know? Good. Yeah. Is that the random fact that everyone always generates when they think of a random fact, or why is that so popular?
For me, it's because the whole "Sexy Back" song that they redid it to Battle of Hastings.
I definitely am not familiar with that.
Oh,
so.
It's great.
Perfect.
1066 Battle of Hastings. 1066 Battle of Hastings. It's great.
The way I usually break into this conversation is like, oh well, now that I know what a sunset is, I can't enjoy it. Right? It's, like, it's clearly not true. Like, I know what a sunset is, and I still think they're really pretty. And I don't think it really has. And honestly, I don't think like knowing what a sunset is makes the sunset more pretty in the moment or less. I think those are separate enough in my mind that I don't think I really need to bring that into it, and I don't need to bring what science teaches us about the universe in order to like have this amazing experience with a tree or something like that. Maybe that can enhance it, and I'm not gonna shit on it. Right, but I think that's still a few steps away from, I don't know, like a really deep internal or external feeling that has nothing to do with your knowledge about the situation, right? And in some cases, I might even say like you having like bringing in your scientific knowledge, and you're like, here, yeah, no, I can compartmentalize this in this way, and like sometimes that's beautiful and wonderful. It's like, okay, yeah, you can totally do that, and then that expands your understanding. But sometimes that's really distracting from just the experience you're having. The intense experience is itself so overwhelming that like if you have room to have those thoughts, then you might be missing out on a part of it. Maybe not, but I just kind of wanted to put that in there as a sort of almost disagreement.
I think it depends on both the person and the situation.
Right.
Well, and I think I do see where you're coming from, and you're right. For me, I was anchoring a lot in like science and stuff, not because I think that's where all spiritual experiences come from, or that's where they all need to end up, but that can be
that science itself is spiritual.
Well,
no.
Or can be. Certainly can be.
Sure, but
I think
that's not the goal.
No, that's not the goal.
And like, like your understanding of nature can pump those intuitions, is what I was trying to get at. So like, I was trying to think of like to the most secular person, if I was talking to Richard Dawkins, luckily he had this conversation with us in a book. But if I was talking to the stereotype of like, the cold, unfeeling scientist, Richard Feynman, nothing is mere, right? Like nothing's merely, refracted light. So like if you're trying to destroy the beauty of a rainbow or a sunset by saying, well, isn't it boring now because we know how they work? It's like, no, man, it's really fucking cool. Are you kidding me? Like, what's a more fun story? Like, oh, God thought you'd like those colors, or
technically, God was promising not to drown everyone in the world again.
It'll be fire next time.
Yeah.
There's another understanding to take it from though, and to say, man, I really understand how this works, and my brain likes the colors and it's really cool, and look at my angle from me to rain over there and the sun behind me can show me the spectrum of colors. Like that's really kind of cool. Again, I don't think that's where all, and you're right, like, man, some spiritual experiences.
I think that understanding might even just distract. Like, I think you have the feeling and then you're like, why am I having this feeling? Oh, the light and refraction, and then you get these colors, and like that's you kind of like running from the experience and going into like some sort of like cognitive exercise that you don't need to do. You can just have the experience.
I absolutely see what you're saying. Okay, I see how that's a disagreement, and you're right.
Right. Yeah. So maybe just the experience is more valuable. I think it's harder to remember if you're not doing that, if you're not like putting it into compartments and whatnot.
And when I said that you're right, I meant that you're right in that you're making a point that is absolutely valid. Not that I'm recanting everything that I said, but that's a different dimension, and you're absolutely right. That I'm missing a huge ingredient by not including that kind of thing. Because you're right, if you're in a sense grounded enough to articulate what's happening, especially if we're talking about psychedelic drugs, like if you're far enough out to where you can't describe it anymore, then you're really having an experience, right?
I think I may have a far more narrative, sort of linguistic type of thinking than you guys do, because my best spiritual experiences have been including things like thinking about how my ancestors viewed the moon and how scary it must have been to be in that kind of time period, and it would not have been the same spiritual experience if I was just looking at the moon. The fact that I was having all these thoughts and relating them to culture and history made it far more profound for me.
I think we're describing different kinds of experiences, but they can both be in the spiritual circle, right?
Yeah. Can you make a strong distinction between something that's like mind blowing and something that's like spiritual? Can you do that?
I can't do that.
So like mind blowing in the way you're like, holy shit, I never realized that before. That kind of changes the way I think about X.
Well, no.
And Z
it was both
or something, right?
I mean, the closest I can think of is when I went to the temple at Burning Man. That was just legitimate emotion blast without any sort of cognitive thing going on there. And even that's not true. Even there, I had the fact that I could think about things and regret things and want things in a literal thinking about words sort of way made it different. And that was probably the most spiritual thing that's happened to me in at least a decade.
I think they're a little different. So like I can read something and be amazed and be thinking about it for years later. The first time I read Meditations on Moloch, that was pretty mind blowing. It's like, whoa, like all these things that I've thought before, just in better words and like artistically done, and like holy, like that's a really big deal. I'm gonna like glom onto that. And then like having a really powerful experience that has nothing to do with words or even like cognition, or it's basically just feelings. They're pretty qualitatively different, I'd say. Although there's a lot of overlap, because then like when I reflect upon like this, I was like extremely like thankful like at that time. Like that can change the way I think about a lot of things. There's huge amounts of overlap either way.
So I'm assuming then when you have sex, it is far more of just a physical sort of emotional thing?
Yeah, I don't always have words going through my head. I mean, so most of the time I have an internal dialogue, right? If we're just talking about how I think right now. But yeah, when things get like ramped up enough. Do you remember the last time you were like really, really angry, maybe?
Yes.
Okay. Were you thinking in complete sentences or words even? Was it like weird grunts and stuff?
I had trouble getting home because I could not navigate from work to home, even though I've done that literally thousands of times.
That's amazing. Yeah, so like the last time I was like really, really mad, that was something I noticed. And I think that's one of the that's an emotion that kind of takes over a lot of the time. Like I don't think a lot of people have like happy just take over. But though, like it's awesome when it does. It's great. It might be a form of mania, but I don't care. It's great. You should just let it happen.
Well, I mean, even at the time, both at the time and looking back on it, that is the least human I've ever felt. Was when like I couldn't even get home and I couldn't articulate myself or anything. It was just anger. That is not a thing that I would like.
But like, you didn't have an internal monologue? Is that what you're saying? Like, were the words shut off? Right? You weren't thinking in the language.
There was definitely still some language in there because I realized it was like frustrated and simple single syllable words because I could tell that I couldn't get home and this was an issue. But no, there was definitely still words in there.
That's really funny. Okay, so I'd say in a lot of cases, yeah, you can go through that feeling a lot of different things and lots of mixtures of different things and whatnot. And it's not going to be like, you're not going to be able to explain it to somebody else later because it wasn't in words. So pushing it through that compression algorithm is just like you can't. It's really hard, right? It's super lossy.
I'm suddenly feeling like I may have found one of these places that has a universal human experience I've never experienced.
Maybe you haven't, right? Here, take this plate of mushrooms. and so like I'm a big fan of like the heroic dose too, right? So like
what is the heroic dose?
That's like a really, really large dose, right?
Oh, okay.
So for mushrooms it's like 5+ grams. I mean, like a normal dose is like an eighth of an ounce, whatever that is like pretty normal for a night. And that'll be like a mildly, like you might slip into something, you might not. 5 grams is like, that's a heavy, you'll be there for a long time.
If I can have ecstatic spiritual experiences without completely taking away my linguistic ability, I'm okay with that though. I don't feel like I need to get to this whole wordless place that you're talking about.
No, you don't need to. I think that's a new place that is valuable for you to go. though. I think it's a new place that's valuable for other people to go.
I can somewhat second that to the limited experience I have with that. Do you remember when we were hanging out and I could barely talk?
Yeah.
That it wasn't. I mean, I had a hard time getting my brain to talk to each other enough to I was limping around like I could barely. There are periods where you'd ask how I'm doing and I'd give you like a shaky thumbs up.
Yeah.
But
I think I want to protest that I think we're losing something if we say to have a spiritual experience you have to go that far.
I don't think you have to. I think that we kind of disagreed that I was pushing hard on like the science and understanding and being able to have that articulation as being one kind of experience.
Okay.
And Jenkins has a lot more experience. Well, he's pushing back not from outside the ring, but from a different part of it. You know, imagine if you had an experience so positive that it was like that angry drive home, right? I don't know, something happened and you literally can't tell your friends about it because it was just like, I can't even describe it to you. I couldn't describe it to myself while it was happening. If that angry experience was a good experience or a positive emotion, that's kind of maybe closer to what this is talking about. Does that hit right?
Yeah, that sounds about. I mean,
I've had that though. I was just able to talk about it afterwards.
Then you haven't had it, man.
I haven't.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, right.
All right.
No, man. Yeah. We'll start gatekeeping on this. No, okay, so here's another one that I want to hit. A lot of the time, this experience will feel somehow more real than normal waking life. So, like, whatever it is that makes you notice that you're in the real world or that you're real or something, or what you're experiencing is not a dream, right? Yeah, it'll feel more like that. I think that's one of the things that especially religious experiences, psychedelic drugs and whatnot, can like really fuck with your intuitions. So like if you're interacting with some sort of like elf in hyperspace, which DMT can do to you, it's really hard to come back from that and just be like, that wasn't real, because it felt more real than this conversation we're having now, right? In a really weird way. So you can't just rely on like, does this feel real or not? Like you can in a lucid dream or something. You're left to your intuitions, and your intuitions are kind of fucking with you in that sense, which makes a lot of sense why like people would like want to die for this, right? Like they're like, this is really, really important
and
to me.
Be so convinced that it's true, that God really does exist, because it just feels so real.
Yeah, right. It's really hard to talk somebody out of it when they're like feeling the presence of the Lord. So the feeling of the sacred is another one, right? So like this is really important. Whatever, like what I'm experiencing now is insanely super important. It's more important than these other things. You know, similar to like it, not only is it more real, you know, people need to know about this. It's hard to not be preachy about it. I fail that a lot. I end up just being like, God, no, like you don't understand. Like this is a big deal. And it is. Like I think it really is a big deal in the sense that like it's a really big deal to me. I can't make my experiences be a big deal to you. That's not going to happen at all. But for me, it opened a lot of doors in a lot of ways that were hugely positive in like a long-term sense.
Can you elaborate on that?
For me personally, it was taking lots of mushrooms many times. So it was like heavy doses. Yeah, a lot of times. And I'd say the main biggest one is like I'm a lot nicer. There were people that liked me and thought I was funny a long time ago. I don't know if anybody would call me a nice person, you know, pre-20. So like, and I know like most teenagers are assholes, but I mean like I like really leaned into it. Like I was just like, no, fuck other people. And most of that was just from like I had a better sense of empathy. I could connect with other people in a better way. Yeah. So after this experience, I could it started to bother me if other people were feeling bad, right? Instead of just like I could notice it maybe sometimes. Like I could notice it more, and then it bothered me more if it was bad or something. So like both empathy and compassion, right? So like empathy is like the ability to understand what other people are feeling. Compassion would be like the desire for them to be feeling the best, whatever it is, that is the best for them. Yeah, I would say...
Do you think that was just a long-term structural change in your brain brought on by the drugs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. Because, so, and part of it coincided with me, like, growing up. You know, it was around the time when I was about to graduate college and you know, started living on my own and with, you know, in other capacities. And I was more of an adult at that time. So, like, I can't just isolate it and say like it was just the mushrooms or it was just growing up or something like that. But I do think it was mushrooms played a really, really big big part of that.
Well, I think part of it too. I want to interject briefly. One, that when I took a mild dose of LSD, that was, and people would argue that milder dose is mild, but for me, mild was one hit, and that was how I tried to describe it. Was, other than like the visual artifacts, there was this sense of profundity to everything. Like, this feels really important. Like, I remember we were eating lunch and I watched a raindrop hit the table, and like it's not like I felt like this cosmic connection with the universe or anything insane. It was just like that was profound in a way that kind of escaped description. But maybe what helped, and maybe tell me if I'm on the right intuition here, that maybe one of the things that jogged your empathy meter into functionality is having stepped outside of yourself and realized that maybe from an experiential sort of way, not been you for an afternoon, right?
I don't know. Honestly, I think it was more just being able to notice things better and caring once I noticed. And I don't know if me stepping outside of myself in that sense did that. Yeah, it's hard for me to tell, honestly. I don't know.
Well, sort of the nature of what we're describing entails that it's hard for you to tell, right?
Right. So I suppose another way I can express this is like my like general behavior is like, life's kind of a zero-sum game. And, if I win, it kind of means somebody else has to lose, right? Which is, I think, a super fucked up way of looking at anything, because it's not true at all.
Yeah.
I mean, you can just think of like two separate people. Okay, now they're friends. Nobody lost in that situation, right? Maybe one person won more than the other person because the other person was more lonely or something. That's a win-win situation. I mean, basic economic theory is like lots of win-win can happen. So that was super valuable for me, and specifically for mushrooms, I've never gotten anything like that from LSD on the few times I've tried it, or DMT. DMT is just weird. I mean, and you'll get like powerful feelings and interesting experiences, and I can describe that to you in a little bit. But
please do.
Yeah, sure, totally. But I kind of want to keep hitting this point. Like it can change you. It doesn't have to. In my experience, all of the changes I can notice are positive. It's possible that degrading specific neuroses I had, like habitual like negative self-talk and whatnot, maybe that eroded like some source of motivation that I used to have. But I still feel like I'm a pretty motivated individual. So if it did that, then not enough for it to cause me real problems that I can tell.
And probably worth the trade-off.
Yeah. I mean, at least for me. And this is part of the reason why like I end up suggesting them so often, is because I end up like I'm constantly talking to nerds, right? Fucking nerds all around me all the time. No, and that like and one thing I notice is that like they're usually like pretty sharp and not very good at like some sort of like emotionally connecting with people in certain ways. Sometimes I'm painting with a broad brush here, but I think like these are the people that I think can really, really benefit from this, because it's like, oh, I can have a deeper connection with other people, and a richer emotional life and better relationships and blah blah blah. Like I was just better able to like notice my own emotions when I felt them, and feel like I feel more now. So I don't know if it's just like me knowing that I'm feeling better, because some people aren't aware of this, but you can feel things and not know that you're feeling those things. It's really weird. Yeah, it's different parts of your brain. I don't know how you want to say it, but that's pretty important, I think. So I also appreciate like music and art and like all forms of visual art a lot more in a stronger sense. So that's what I can pretty much just boil it down to like mushrooms, like lots and lots of mushrooms have done for me.
Okay.
Right? I mean, there were a few times that were definite like watershed moments where I was like, oh, I'm doing this and I need to stop doing that, or like, oh, I'm maybe not doing enough of this or something. But it's not like you'll take this, you realize it, and like you'll immediately be a different person. Usually that's not the case. You still have to do the work to like fix yourself. Mostly, I would say they're like really powerful introspective tools, at least for me. LSD, I haven't gotten anything like that on that. I feel like I can maybe like understand the world differently, in a different way. You were talking about having like fractalized thoughts in a way a while ago. I'm a really big fan of this one guy's music. and it's really good. And I was listening to this album, and I realized like every side of this because I was listening to it on vinyl because I think I'm better than you. And I was like, so I was listening to it, and I was like, every side of this album like contains the essence of this album in it. And I was like, wait, no, it's really every song. And like,
oh my god, it's every
like,
note.
Oh my god, like this, like it's every. And then like I can zoom out and be like, yeah, but like every album like contains like the essence of. So I learned the 72 names of Derek Vincent Smith that day, and it was really great. But the whole like fractalized, self-similar sorts of lines of thinking. I think of fractals as like the most psychedelic thing. Like when I'm trying to characterize what psychedelia is, fractals are like that's as close as I can get to like like that's it. That's the essence of it. It's the infinite self-similarity. You can find like infinite, complicated, interesting aspects in like a teeny tiny fraction of a spot, right?
I think that hits pretty close to if I had to articulate it.
Yeah,
it's hard to gauge it on time. Somewhere like a third of the day thinking about basically one thing, and it just it kept going in, and I realized that there's more and more layers to this, and that I can keep going deeper and deeper into this thought. And I liked the fractal imagery for it too, because everything kind of felt like there was like these weird shards that could go off in 1,000 different directions, but I kept just going down this one way. And yeah, that hits it pretty well.
Another aspect of like a mystical experience would be like paradoxicality. You can be experiencing two seemingly conflicting like emotions and thoughts and understandings of things without really realizing that they're conflicting, or like they conflict, but they don't really conflict. That's about as well as I can explain it to you.
So with all this talking we've been doing about spirituality and drugs, I guess, and they're not
same thing, man.
All right.
Really, I mean, you can separate the two, but not really. I'm pretty well convinced that most religions kind of started through like some sort of shamanistic source at the beginning. I'd be really surprised. I suppose like you can do these things if you just like starve yourself and whip yourself
there's lots of ways to get it.
Yeah, sure, I guess so. Like yeah,
just a little bit harder.
You can like feel so bad and think you're gonna die that you can have one of these experiences for sure. But it's a lot easier. I mean, especially if you think of like prehistoric man. It's like, well, they either could have done that, and they, some of them probably did, or just like find mushrooms growing out of poop. So that's where like cubensis grow. It's pretty likely. LSD was what was that in 1930s? When did Albert Hofmann first synthesize that?
No idea.
I don't remember. Albert Hofmann, Swiss chemist, amazing guy. What's really interesting, you can look at the different molecules of like each of these drugs. So like you can compare serotonin to DMT, right? And that's serotonin, that's DMT.
This does not help anyone who's listening to the podcast.
But you can put pictures on the podcast. I don't know. Anyway, LSD is a much larger molecule than psilocybin, which is the active chemical in mushrooms. And LSD like hangs around a lot longer. So like all the girls listening that dye their hair red, that like red hair dye might like lingers a lot longer because the molecules are bigger. So when they latch on for a really long time. They have a really strong bond. So like the first time you wash it, it gets knocked out. So similar thing with LSD, right? It hangs around.
What do we do with all this spirituality talk that we've been talking
First,
about?
we start our own religion.
Okay.
Then we ask everybody to give us all of their money.
No. Only 10%. It's got to be maintainable. If they give us all their money, then they only give us the money the one time, and then they're broke.
Dude, have you seen the Scientology centers? Right?
Yeah.
They're pretty loaded. Right?
All right.
You just got to get them involved enough that they want to. No. I don't know. So I think the main point to get across is that you shouldn't believe in the Christian God because there's no reason to, right?
Right.
But like, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Still understand that people can have these experiences. You don't need to be religious in order to have them. They can still be just as important to you. They can be just as important to the world, I think. If like, one person changing and being, a much better person overall. Again, like this is like your mileage may vary, and not everybody reacts with these things that way. And there are a lot of people that take massive doses of LSD all the time, and they're still assholes. Like it still happens. I think you still have to do the work, but I think it becomes really difficult to lie to yourself about how you are and what you're doing, and when you're experiencing something like that, and that can be really valuable. But just outside of that, like, it's really interesting. Like, it's valuable in the same way that, like, an orgasm is valuable. Like, it can just be valuable for itself. It doesn't need to be this external thing that affects more people. It can just affect you and be good for you. Yeah, I still see the value in that, and I think people should seek those out. Apparently, meditation's a really good way to get there too. I've never I've had a few weird experiences meditating, but I don't meditate enough to really know.
I mean, I've heard it's good, but it also takes a lot of time and effort, and which I just don't have to give right now.
Most difficult things do. Right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, from what I've heard, I can take a lot of mushrooms and approximate the effect of years of meditation experience.
Probably not the same thing, but
okay.
But yeah, maybe like an ego death sort of situation. Basically, I just want to say, like, people that don't think they're valuable, you're wrong, right? Like, they are valuable. They would be valuable to you, not necessarily the same way. Like, a lot of people take mushrooms and not like them and don't like them. And you know, I think those people are wrong. No,
I think there's a lot of value to be had in spirituality, but also it shouldn't become the most important thing ever, where you dedicate your life to joining a monastery. Like, I sometimes feel really bad about the amount of human effort that has been wasted pursuing religious things and these spiritual things. I'm like,
as opposed to,
I don't know, spirituality is really great and all, but
of a like lifeless human like machine. I don't know.
Yes, sure, right? Anything. I don't know.
Well, so
okay,
like,
so my parents went to visit Tibet at one point, and they were taken to this place where someone's footprints were in the wood, like literally, I think, depending on, you know, how much pressure the various parts of his feet had put on the wood, between a 1/4 inch and a 1/2 inch, just completely indented into the wood, which had been worn away over the decades that he'd come and knelt in that exact same spot, and the wood had just eventually worn away from the constant, his feet being right there. And like, the monks pointed at that and be like, this is such an amazing thing, look at how dedicated this person was. And my parents were also impressed, and I was like, all I could think was how many hours of life were wasted kneeling there. That,
well, it was by his choice, right? Like,
yeah, it was by his choice, but first of all, could have done so much more with his life. And secondly, he's being supported by the local peasantry. This is a waste of both a life and resources. And I think, as awesome as spirituality is, and I do think it's awesome, and I think we need some sort of, well, I would like to someday have some sort of common resource as a way that we can process these things, but I don't think it should ever get to the point where people are like dedicating their lives to it. It seems like just too much of it's like the people who just do drugs constantly and don't do anything else because they're like, man, life is just about being high all the time. Like, no, there's other things too.
Or running with
you are high all the time.
I mean, you're high all the time.
I don't do drugs. I am drugs, man. That's Dolly, by the way. Yeah, that's it. Anyway.
I had a couple quick things to add. I was going to say, just to bring your point home, we used the orgasm example as meaningful experiences. If you just could take a pill that would give you an orgasm for 70 years and then you died, that might be a life wasted, right? It might be a fun life, but I think it's possible to not know what you're missing out on, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're just having a ton of pleasure all the time, you might never really know other kinds of pleasure, like a good meal or loving somebody or something, right? So I do think that, if you're just find a way to stay high all the time, you're probably missing out on experiences worth having.
But on the other hand, if you're never high, you're also missing out on something.
Yeah, probably. I mean, so you asked what we do with all this spirituality talk. I think one thing is that I would like to, I guess, propagate the idea that you can have meaningful, life-changing experiences and talk about them in ways that don't necessitate you having to identify with a religious context. So I kind of want to take back the idea that if religions if they didn't create the sense or rather, if they didn't coin it, they certainly seem like they claim to own it, and I don't think they get a monopoly on it.
Religion has stolen a lot of things over the course of the centuries.
Well, and I think it very well may
pretty buildings.
It may well have started, architecture, art. it may well have started from contexts like that. Whether someone found mushrooms growing in poop or someone just realized, I'm not a practiced meditator to the extent that, I spend a lot of time on retreats or anything. I don't even spend that much time day to day practicing meditation, but I do introspect a lot, and I do practice mindfulness, I think, quite a bit. That's sort of, there's a number of things that mindfulness does. One thing, in essence, mindfulness is like paying enough attention to where your thoughts come from and where they go, that it makes your internal dialogue third person rather than first person. And the sense that the world is full of, in a non-hippie way, the world's full of love. People love their families, their friends. And meditating on that thought doesn't take 10 years in a cave. You can do it in 10 minutes, and I think many people can be moved by that experience. And, then you sit behind somebody in traffic on the interstate on your way to work, and road rage hits, and you're like, this person might be a prick. In fact, they have to be because they fucking cut me off. But I think you recognize really quickly the futility of that sort of wasted cognitive effort. And if that person isn't a complete psychopath, they have things that they care about too. And that sense that they care about something is valuable. So that's one thing that you can do with this insight, that spirituality is important. I might disagree with you fairly firmly that I don't think it necessitates drugs. Drugs might necessitate a spiritual experience, but I don't think that you need to be high or have been high to have. Excuse me. You don't have to have been high on drugs.
Been high. Like
you needed to.
The door was shut before I had gone there, and afterwards, it's so like I've had them without drugs, but only afterward.
Sure.
And it was like clearly very reminiscent and sort of thing. So, I mean, that's a big improvement too. It's like, oh, now I can have these experiences that I'd never had before, and I feel like I probably never would. Maybe like once I have a baby or something like that. That might be different.
Well, really quick, that brings to mind the last point I was going to make was that, if a drug-spawned spiritual experience isn't enough to make you a new person, like you said, you have to put in the work. I think it can definitely catalyze it.
Oh,
right?
yeah, for sure.
So, it might never happen without them. It might happen in 6 weeks where it might have taken 6 years.
You can't fix a problem that you don't know is there.
Yeah,
right?
And so it definitely...
you're not willing to admit is there or something.
Or just that you can't notice, right? So
right.
I think it can definitely kick off a lot of those insights.
I kind of want to push back on Enyash saying like that's a life wasted. It's like in a certain case it might be a life wasted. That's not really how I want to live my life. But if that's something you're not willing to dedicate yourself to, is like a full, complete understanding of your own experience and expanding that experience and having more of them, then like what is worth it, right? And if it's just like for other people, it's like, okay, well then to what end, right? Like where does that line of questioning end? My own answer really is like, if I'm supposed to be good, this isn't a great answer at all, but I see it as like, you need to be doing good on a lot of different levels, right? But like the first main one is like, you need to be good to yourself, first and foremost, before you can even really be good at being good to the people closest to you, and so on and so forth as you get to like people in your community, people in your country or state or whatever, and then like people in the world, which effective altruism, man, plug that. That's probably the best way to do, people on the other side of the planet. But then, you still have all those other levels where it's like, you can't just abandon your community for the sake of kids in Ghana with malaria. I mean, you can, but, your community is still going to exist, right? Yeah, right. I would say you probably shouldn't, but other people might disagree. But the spiritual fulfillment thing is like, I think that's probably how you can be best to yourself, right? I don't think just like devolving into a pit of nihilistic
despair,
acquiring more money to buy more money,
right,
with it, is really
you don't want to become a Rick,
right. Right. You love that show because it's so deep and philosophical, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's I like that show because the fart jokes are amazing. Right?
We disagreed on
yeah. You're like, oh, it's this deep
I was like,
show,
that's the best episode ever. You're like, there were no jokes in it.
No, well,
to be fair, you have to be very intellectual to understand Rick and Morty.
Yeah. Nothing personnel, kid.
We totally got to have an episode where we just geek out about Rick and Morty.
To qualify, that last line was a joke from a meme about Rick and Morty fans.
Right.
Very high IQ.
We should probably wrap up okay. Unless you have something wrapping up.
Well, so some people might argue. I've never done ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is basically DMT over a long period of hours. It's sort of like taking an MAOI, monoamino acidase inhibitor, I think, and then consuming a brew with DMT in it, so like it stays in your system. I think that's how it works. Somebody that knows better, and that's the one where like you go down to Peru and you purge a lot, and you have a shaman beat a drum, and like there's like a ceremony surrounding it, which I think ceremony is good when you're about to do something that's a big deal. Hi, kitty. Hi. Oh, he's so cute. So I've never done that. But a lot of people say that's like the center of the spiritual or the psychedelic experience. It's the most helpful. I wish I could talk more about it, like firsthand, but I can't. I have tried DMT though, and DMT is insanely weirdly it's just weird. I suggest reading DMT, the Spirit Molecule by Rick Strassman. He's a scientist that works at the University of New Mexico and ran like clinical experiments, just like giving this to people and being like, so like, what did you see? And huge variability. A lot of it was people like interacting with aliens or fairies or things like that. So
wasn't that a very common response?
Super common.
So like there was variability. 50%. Yeah, there's variability in where they went and who they talked to, but this sense of going somewhere else and talking to something greater.
Interacting with somebody, right? Which is not super common. Like if you're on like mushrooms or LSD, you have to be on like a lot to be like seeing other people, things or having. It's not really the same thing. This is like a whole new thing.
Would you
like you're like folded into a new dimension?
Would you recommend that you not do it unless you have someone sober around watching you?
Well, set and setting are important so like any time you're going to be doing something intense to your mind, make sure like you're in a good place emotionally and mentally, right? I think it's like I wouldn't suggest these for depressed people or people with bipolar disorder or like issues that you like really need to work out. Because things can go wrong more often there.
Can I weigh in there really quick?
Yeah.
Two things. One, the cool thing about DMT, one of the cool things, is that the trip begins and ends within 20 minutes. Oh. It's not an all-day thing where you're out of it. You take it.
Die of exposure or something while you're doing this.
Not unless you live in the South Pole.
Yeah. But like all of these things can fuck you up emotionally. So like that's like there's still a risk, but I think it's really low.
We should probably wait to talk about DMT until someone has done it.
I've done it a bunch of times.
Oh, you have done it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's right.
I haven't done ayahuasca. So ayahuasca is a different way of it's like similar, same drug, but like there's more drugs in there too. So it's not just DMT. But
can I dive in really quick about the emotional component or the mental background component? So yeah, set and setting and all that stuff. But at least from my own anecdotal experience, I found that with like mild depression, that tinkering with psychedelics, I think kind of
it'll help you.
Yeah.
When it's mild depression, right?
When it's mild. Right. So I don't know if I don't want to say that it will help you.
But if you're like suicidal,
right? Yeah. So I don't want to say that it will help you because it might be your mileage may vary, but getting that
there's high potential for benefits there, I would say.
And there's now that the clinical study of some of these drugs is resuming, there's clinical evidence to support that as well. So you just mentioned about not wanting
Although there's some actual science you can look up. Like one study I was reading, it was like 70% or something like that said like it was like one of the most like powerful, amazing things that they experienced. And this was with mushrooms. I think it had like long lasting effects. And then like the 30% that didn't like it, and this was in a clinical setting, so it might not have been best situation for them to be taking mushrooms. The 30% like they didn't have like lasting negative effects. I'd say that's pretty promising, especially when you can control, I'm not going to take this in a hospital, I'm going to take this like with my friends or, on my own, or depending on what you want to get out of it, like you can take them and go to a concert or, an art gallery or, a cathedral or whatever, or with a therapist, maybe, if you can get them to talk to you while you're on drugs. Hi, buddy.
I just had a transcendent
or with
ritualist.
Your cat, you should like totally do drugs with your cat. I don't give drugs to the cat. I mean, just hang out with your cat.
I just had a transcendent spiritual experience with your cat just now. It just licked my hand, and that was pretty awesome.
So cute. Here, can I finish with how I would explain DMT?
Sure.
So first, you kind of fold into a new space, and then you'll notice you're in a weird pulsing glowing room, and there's this child that's sort of like a cartoon child dressed in just pink and white, and he's pulling something out of a box, saying, "We're so good here," and he puts contents in the box. And you notice there are insectoid aliens crawling on your face going, and after all your efforts to get away from them by turning inside yourself, you just turn in and inward. They're still there. You're realizing that you have a body, and you can open your eyes, and you see your brother smiling at you, and you've noticed that you've been vibrating into the pillow, going and crying the whole time.
So was this your experience?
Totally unable to process. Yeah, this full cocktail of super powerful emotions while you're reading all this. Yes, yeah, this is kind of like a compound of 2 or 3, but I think it gives kind of.
I'm not sure if you bolstered or invalidated every point you made tonight.
That's DMT. I haven't extracted anything of strong value from DMT. Even chemically, it's really similar to psilocin. Look up pictures of psilocin, psilocybin, and DMT. You'll see that they're all very close to each other, probably interacting with your brain in similar ways. But fuck. So DMT is endogenous, right? So it's produced within your body, which makes it different than all these others. Stop biting me, buddy. Stop biting. Don't edit these out. Just leave.
All this stop
leave
biting.
The no biting. Hey, kitty, stop.
There's actually a cat. He didn't have DMT.
Yeah, right.
Well,
yeah, right.
I mean, he might have had DMT too, but there's also a cat.
Well, every living thing's on DMT all the time. I think you can find it in pretty much anything that's living.
So nothing is actually real, and we're all brains and vats that are DMT hallucinating.
It's all really weird. It's very, very weird. And again, feels more real than real, right? I don't know. So that one, most of what I've gotten out of it is your brain can experience way weirder things than you think it can. It can experience way more than that. So I haven't extracted any more value from that, but in this book I was talking about, I think there's a Netflix documentary, DMT: The Spirit Molecule, that explains it, hosted by Joe Rogan, so it's quality. So that's DMT. I don't know if that's more or less interesting to you guys now to look into, but whatever.
Well, 2 hours a lot, and if we did, I don't think we had time for feedback, did we?
No, we definitely don't have time for feedback. We can do this.
We'll do a forced wrap up. I want to thank our supporter this time, so I get the credit, and you just get to repeat what I say as far as gratitude, because so far it's always been you.
You're right, because I always have the names right in front of me.
That's right. Special thanks to supporter Tim Sharp this week. It's supporters like you that keep the lights on in here and keep the episodes on the internet. So,
yay! Thank you, Mr. Sharp.
Yes, and keep in mind that you can write reviews at iTunes. You can come on the website. You can come into the subreddit. You can write us emails. We read every email. I don't respond. We don't have time to respond. Well, it's not time. It's sometimes I mean to get around to them in episodes and we don't, or they're for feedback and we don't always get back to them. But everyone is read and appreciated. So don't think that they're just being left in the inbox. That's all I got.
Yeah, that's everything. Thank you guys for all your support and your reviews and ratings and all that. And we'll see you next time.
Cool. Thanks.
Hope this was valuable somehow. Bye.
Bye.